We pick up with our heroes as they're just about to enter the old fortress that burrows into the hillside on the southern slopes of the valley. As they enter further within, Dane steps forward and in his gravelly voice says, "We may be cursed by devilry outside this place. I'll stand and guard our rear."
So, Tiberius, would you... the entrance is supposed to be around here, so maybe take your sword to some of the weeds and we'll get in.
Indeed, brother. I think I'll peel back the weeds rather than sullying my sword with such simple work, but indeed, I'll get right to it.
After rummaging around in the undergrowth for several minutes, Tiberius is able to locate an area which seems to lead further in to this side of the hill. As he's uncovering the entrance, Primus lights a lantern and pulls a cloth up around his face to protect him from any sort of fungal infection or danger that may lurk within. As you start moving further in, you can see that rather like the rest of the valley, there are fungi and moulds sprouting from between the vines and the mosses that form the rest of this vegetation. So, obviously, you've thought to cover your mouth, Primus. Wulfric, you're not inside yet. However, Tiberius, since you've been sort of in there moving it all, can you please make a saving throw?
That's not the correct result that we're looking for.
It's not looking good for you, I'll be perfectly honest with you.
It's not rolling under, it's rolling over.
That's right, yeah.
Good effort, though.
Okay, so I'm afraid to tell you, Tiberius, that you have contracted fungal sickness. Until you are cured of this, you count as you are down 1 point of constitution.
Ooh. And I take it that takes a hit point as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
Okay, so as you're sort of rifling amongst this vegetation and these spores are going everywhere, you accidentally inhale some of them, and a few moments later you start to develop this sort of like racking, chesty cough it makes this horrible rattling sound. After a few minutes, your breathing's quite laboured, you sound quite wheezy. Realising that Tiberius might be in trouble, Primus tries to forcibly remove him from the tunnel in the side of the hill. However, Tiberius shakes him off, now covering his face, saying that he'll be fine and that they must push on for the sake of the villagers. He shouts back to his brother Wulfric outside that if he's going to enter, he should be careful because there are spores and that he should cover his face.
Tiberius, what's going on?
I've been caught out by one of those dastardly mushrooms.
After some discussion about Tiberius' health and the danger he may be placing himself in, they decide to push on further into the hillside ruins.
So, John, while still outside, I'm gonna light my one of my torches.
Mm-hmm.
So that I too have a light source and/or a weapon, because
Nice.
damn that torch last time.
So, Tiberius, as you're taking up the lead, I presume you can see down the corridor now, Wulfric?
Yeah.
Splendid. Okay, so Tiberius, as you're moving into here, underneath these vines and the mosses on either side of you, as you head down this corridor, for want of a better term, you can just about make out in some gaps where the moss hasn't grown over it what appears to be stonework of some kind. It looks as though it's very crude, like those rough stone walls where like natural bits of stone have been like placed on top of each other, but it's quite obviously an artificial structure. Taking precautions against further infection, they move deeper into these strange ruins. Wulfric moves to the head of the party, lighting his torch and waving it around, whilst Tiberius prods any large mushrooms they come across, discharging their spores harmlessly and the torch burning them away as they move. Wulfric, as you sort of hold it up high briefly, you see sort of like set sort of quite high up, almost at the roof of the ceiling of this chamber, is what appears to be partway up the wall. It looks like it's the remnants of a raised wooden platform, although most of it appears to have long since fallen into decay. There's just like a few sort of planks remaining.
So, what do you think that is?
Oh, I don't really know, brother. It's kind of looking at it, John. Does it look to be more of a second story, or is it a bridge? Or...
It looks as though it might have once been sort of like a watch wall or something. But I mean, you guys know from what you heard in the village that apparently this fort may once have been above ground. So perhaps it was like a sort of raised platform so defenders could look over the walls.
Okay.
As you're sort of moving forward to get a better look at it, your foot bumps against something, and there's a chink of what sounds like metal as you move through the sort of moss and fungi that carpet the floor of this chamber.
Kind of tuck up my gauntlet glove and just kind of have a little bit of a rummage down there.
Okay, you reach down as you sort of move some of the moss away. You see what appeared to be a number of weapon blades. There's like a couple of axes, a couple of sword blades. However, it's literally just the metal parts of the weapons that are here. So it's like axe heads, sword blades, but no like handles, hafts, etc.
And in terms of just being the blades, I take it they are old and kind of rusted, or are they new?
They are old and rusted. They've obviously suffered from the damp hereabouts. Most of them look to be of an extremely old design, though. They're not sort of like, obviously you can tell they're swords, you can tell they're axes, etc., but they're not of like the current designs you might expect to find in the Havenlands.
Can I identify them? Because I'm used to the weapons the cults used.
Roll me a d6.
Okay. A 4.
Yeah, as you're looking at them, you don't think they're exactly the same as the designs that the cults use, but they look like these might have been a forerunner of the designs that some of like the pagan cults may have used.
I draw my gladius and I would compare it a bit to one of the weapons which is similar.
Or possibly this is kind of mushroom demon from their pagan gods?
Well...
Mushroom demon?
Yes, evil has many forms, brother. Many forms.
The group continues moving through the buried fortress, finding it difficult to move quickly due to the spongy, moss-covered ground, when Wulfric spots something on the very edge of his torchlight. Okay, as you peer down to the extreme of your torchlight, you can see in the far corner of the chamber what appears to be this faintly luminescent green fungus. It appears to be much larger than the sort of more normal or common mushrooms that are surrounding it. And like I say, there's this vague sort of, it catches the light of your torch in an odd way and reflects it back a little in this sort of pallid green hue. They begin discussing what to do about the mushroom when Tiberius breaks off into a racking chesty cough. As he takes his handkerchief away from his face, it is spotted with small flecks of blood.
Presumably you're like, oh.
I probably would kind of like dab my hand onto the like chief and then just kind of like wipe it down my side and kind of sheepishly ignore it. John, I'm going to poke it with my sword.
Okay, that is absolutely fine. You poke it with your sword. The area around you guys is immediately filled with this cloud of spores that seem to glitter in the light from your various light sources. Now, you've all got your faces covered, so I'm going to ask, can each of you make me a d6 roll? You need to get anything but a 1.
Ready for my double illness.
You are all absolutely fine. But for a few moments, this area around you is filled with these almost like sparkling green motes of light. Thinking that they can't be too careful with this thing, the group put the glowing green mushroom to the torch and continue investigating the chamber. Whilst Tiberius is examining an alcove in the uneven southern wall, he takes the opportunity to spit some bloody spittle onto the floor. He notices as it strikes the mossy covering of the floor that the blood is absorbed with astounding and frightening rapidity.
I'll like step towards the this passageway, and I like look at Tiberius. Just about done there.
Oh yes, I was just making sure there wasn't any kind of false wall or anything over there.
Yes, if this truly is a construction that has sunk, that is probably something we should be on the lookout for. And it might not be that it was the intention of the original builders to build secret doors. It could just be, as the thing collapsed, there could be new formations and hidden rooms behind dirt.
Or behind your spores and mold.
True.
I'll kind of calm and coolly act as if that was my genuine thing, rather than just me trying to spit on the sly. And yes, exactly. Very good. Wolfric, yes, exactly as I thought.
Continuing their explorations, they move into an even more overgrown chamber where the floor appears to have collapsed into some sort of aperture below, leaving a yawning hole in the floor of the chamber that they're now exploring.
I would pull out one of my ropes and try to tie myself and hand whoever takes it the other end and try to get closer and look down this hole a bit.
Okay, so Primus has tied a rope around himself and he's like holding it out to you two. Who's grabbing it?
I'll take hold of it. Also, can I have a quick cursory look at the floor, John, using my almost disgusting tracking skills to see if there's anyone passed through here?
Oh, you most
just lean
certainly
down.
can.
And you like run your hand on the ground, and you're like, yes, there were mushrooms here. Not long ago.
I sense mold. Okay, so roll me a d20 for your tracking attempt, please. Okay, you can tell, despite the fact it's been long overgrown and the foliage has grown back, that at some point in time something massive heaved itself across the floor of this chamber and into the hole in the floor. I mean, the sort of drag marks it made in the ground have been overgrown, but thanks to your like ridiculous amount of tracking, you're identifying the furrows underneath. However, roll me a d6. Because obviously you're having to like get in amongst it to like look for the tracks. You're fine.
Still good.
It's good.
I maintain this level of sickness. Kind of like a cast my eye at the floor. Don't mean to alarm any of you, but something massive's passed through here. So big that the floor seems to have given way.
Well,
Careful down there, Primus.
Primus is lowered down on a rope through the hole into a chamber below, a veritable grotto of giant mushrooms and overgrowing mould that seems to be coating every surface. Shining his torch about as he dangles on the end of the rope, he looks for whatever caused the hole but can't really see into the furthest corners of the chamber. Suddenly there is a sickening from the far end of the chamber and he shouts to be pulled up.
I think that's sufficient. Yes.
Okay.
Barely.
And you were indeed right about the mould tentacle. What appears to be a large amalgamation of vines and mould forming this large tentacle briefly emerges from this hole, tries to grab Primus's leg. You leap back out of the way, Primus, and this tentacle goes and slithers back into the hole.
Out. We should really get out of here.
Okay, As you're doing this, again, there's this sound, and what appear to be two of these tendrils burst out of this hole, and they actually punch into the stone on either side of you.
Yeah, so I was just saying, John, I'm gonna check out the thing at like the edge of the pit to the north. So I'm just turning towards this, and then there's the hole.
Indeed, as you're stepping forward, one of them sort of like smashes into the stone no more than like 5 feet in front of you. You see it tense as though like almost like, you know, like a muscle when someone strains to like pull something. You see both of these tentacles tense, and you can actually hear the stone in the walls creaking.
I immediately hack onto the bottom.
Okay,
Tendril.
that's fine.
Brace yourself, the devil is coming.
Just kind of like, I'll step up to the edge, effectively waiting for whatever is dragging itself up to be on it, to be within sword swiping range.
As Tiberius steps forward to face the beast, Primus madly hacks at the tentacle in the wall nearest to him, with Wulfric attempting to burn the other one. With a final swipe of his axe, Primus severs the tentacle. The flailing stump of it sprays green liquid everywhere and slithers back into the hole from whence it came. Tiberius and Primus, since you're the ones in its path as it snakes back, can you both roll me a d6? Primus, you need to get anything that's not... You need to get 4+, because you're like right next to it. Tiberius, you only need to get a 3+, since you're a bit further away.
Nope. That's 3.
Okay, make me a saving throw, please, Primus.
Mm-hmm. I have seconds from 14. Nope.
Okay, as this sickening sort of oily like fluid lands on you, you feel immediately, you feel sort of like as though the strength in your limbs has become somewhat lessened. You also now have fungal sickness, and you'll be counted as 1 less constitution until cured.
I peer down the actual the chasm and see if I can see anything coming up, even if I can get a sly stab before it even gets up to the full height.
Indeed, as you look down, you can see this horrendous mass of vegetable and fungal matter with these flailing tentacles emerging seemingly at random from it. It appears to be like still heaving itself upwards, albeit a bit slower now. It's only got 1 tentacle anchored in the wall. It's not really sort of like near enough that you can just like reach down like whoop, yet, because it's still sort of slowly like pulling itself up.
I sort of pull out the actual silver, like, holy symbol and be like, "By the power of God, you will be well this day, you will be burned by holy fire," and all that kind of religious spiel.
As Wulfric continues trying to burn the remaining tendril with his torch, with a sickening lurching squelch, this huge fetid mass of vegetation heaves itself from the hole, and a tendril of mould and vines lashes out towards Tiberius.
Skill. I think it's going to be a different skill.
Okay, is a 17 enough to hit you, Tiberius?
It is.
Okay.
I guess.
Is it even possible for us to get this high of an AC in level 1?
I could afford a shield.
Okay, it hits you for 10 hit points of damage, Tiberius.
Well, that's me down. So I'm like, God, God.
I hope you have a reserve carrot.
Make sure you amend your hit points on your token. If you click on it, you should see the circles outlined, and it's the green one you need to amend.
Because I'm 1 down from what I was because of the sickness. So.
How dead is he really? If he hits 0, is he instantly dead?
I'm afraid, strictly speaking, when hit points reach 0, the character dies. However, since we're using the bind wounds rules, I'm going to say that if someone can get to him and like bind his wounds this round, and like get him into a positive hit points, that means you've like saved him. Whereas if at the end of this round he's still on 0 hit points, it will be brown bread.
Or green,
Indeed.
as it might be.
Green toast.
Moldy bread.
Fried green tomatoes.
Indeed.
Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much what happens. You guys see Tiberius go, "In the name of the one God, you will be..." And this tentacle just impacts him in his midriff, lifts him off the ground, and sort of spangs him back into the wall about there.
Just so I understand it correctly, this thing just pulled itself up on this one tentacle.
Yep.
Is it still hanging on the tentacle, or is it fully up already?
It's now sort of like wedged itself on the ground, so it doesn't really need the tentacle in the wall. Wulfric frantically tears the armour off his injured brother, applying bandages and fire to seal his wounds. After a few moments, Tiberius awakes, coughing and spluttering, but his face is still pained and pale. Primus grabs his grappling hook, sinks it into the stone wall, ties it around himself, runs up, leaps at this thing. The force of his leap does indeed push it back over into the hole. However, as it does so, its tendrils wrap around Primus. There is a tung as the grappling hook comes out of the wall, and both he and the creature disappear into the darkness.
Just saying, Tiberius, I ain't gonna grab your shit.
What the fuck?
That's right. I'm just kind of like,
Okay.
by the one God.
Wasn't expecting that, but just give me a
Yeah,
moment.
do you just continue from where you left off?
Yeah, pretty much. I finished my rhetoric as I reach for the hook.
Now you just have to pull me up again while I'm wrapped in tentacles.
So you're standing there in your like half plate armor. It's just like, "Urgh."
Yes. So what actually happens is you're literally bent over him, like sealing his wounds, Wulfric. When suddenly he just like you hear like this, like, tung, 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 and your brother like pushes you out of the way with one arm. That you feel there's barely any strength behind it, but he pushes you out of the way, hurls himself forward with the last of his remaining strength, and he doesn't so much grab hold of the rope as he just like lands on it with his entire body, and the weight of his body and his plate armor is like holding this rope. You can see Primus sort of like with his heels like on the very edge of it, sort of leant over backwards, like sort of 45 degrees, like holding onto this rope.
I'm screaming like all the fucking time. Oh fuck!
Down below you in the darkness, Primus, you can hear like this like pulling himself back up onto the same level as the rest of his group. Primus orders them to beat a hasty retreat from the underground catacombs. They decide to return to the village to gain additional supplies to help them against the abominable creature that lurks within the catacombs. On their way back, it is dark and they are forced to camp overnight, but their sleep is blissfully undisturbed. A good job, since Tiberius is still lingering on death's door. The next morning, they head down the gently rolling slope away from the nightmare behind them towards the village of Otterdale. Okay, as you head back into the village, there's a different mood about the place. When you were here previously, the whole place was being prepared for a celebration. It appears to be a good deal more sombre now, and as you head back into the main area of the village, you don't see anywhere near as many people as you did previously. And the ones you do see look a little bit pale and almost sickly.
Hear ye, and I have like Tiberius's dented breastplate that I'm banging my like dagger on.
Yeah, I can still repair that, you know.
I
Okay,
try to stand behind him and make this gesture. Give him
a few sort of like
authority.
sickly-looking people, sort of coughing, sort of emerge from their homes, bleary-eyed, and sort of like slowly gather around you. Like,
Yeah, it's just gonna be the language has changed. It's just gonna be
The vocabulary.
Yeah.
so I bang the breastplate and I go, let it be known that a dreadful terror has come upon this village, as many of you doubtlessly know. I point at the sick people. there is, but some leagues that way, a terrible cave inside which is the demon responsible for your ills.
Okay, make me a charisma roll. So, D20, you need to get equal to or less than your charisma.
As I slid off the mule, I'll stand behind him and be like, "You're doing really well, brother. I'm proud of you."
I imagine for a minute you're going to slide up behind him and be like, yeah.
Yeah.
Charisma is the one thing we can do.
Yeah, charisma, and there's the D20. 1. No modifiers. Yep, I have 15. That's a 7.
Okay, so due to your rousing speech, you actually see like a few more of the like slightly weller-looking villagers who are presumably tending to like their sick families emerge from their huts to see what all the noise is about. Despite the magnetic pull of Wulfric's charisma, the group are unable to persuade the poor peasants of Otterdale to accompany them in person to fight against the abominable creature in the catacombs on the southern slopes of the valley. However, they do get the local villagers to agree to bring them all of the oil that they have so that they may attempt to purge the beast with holy fire. They also instruct everyone to gather as much wild garlic as they can and brew it into a soup to cure those who are sick. They are aided in this by Sally Brooks, who seems much recovered and is now helping to minister to the ill villagers. A short while later, with all of their oil supplies gathered, they return to the catacombs. So, Tiberius, you're the oil master, so I think this is a fairly sound plan. So roll me a d6, Tiberius, and it's anything but a 1, and you're grand.
Oh, but I'm good at rolling ones.
Now I'm interested in like what happens on a 1.
Okay, not a problem. Tiberius, with the help of Primus and your brother, you lay out this trail of oil. You get these barrels set up as described, so that on the edge, ready to go over into this thing. Now, who's going to be responsible for lighting it and making sure it all goes up in a blaze? And again, it's really just down to who's rolling the dice.
Since I may see myself expendable, I would do it.
Okay, again, roll me d6, anything but a 1.
Okay.
Okay, that is absolutely fine. You set fire to this oil, and as you watch, you see the door start, the sort of entrance to this thing starts to burst open as this thing's trying to like heave its way out. But by the time it's getting out, it's already ablaze with the oil covering it, mixing with the ichor covering this creature. And before too long, it is reduced to a smouldering heap of ash and dust. And it slowly expires with this faint, high-pitched, keening sound of the fluids bubbling away.
I kiss a small cross and say, "Praise be, fire is the holiest element."
I likewise will say a little prayer.
Okay, splendid. And with that, sorry.
I'll just like cap that whole sequence off and like, don't know what you're muttering about. It's literally the oil. It's the fish in the oil.
Okay, and with that, you have slain the beast lurking in the old Goman fortress. You return to town, where people are already on the mend, thanks to Sally and her children spreading this garlic soup, as it were, and they've been encouraging like people to put this wild garlic in like their normal food and stuff like that. So people are slowly on the mend,